At 27 years old, I've made over $10 million from the internet. And I can attribute this primarily to the books that I've read over the years. Now, a lot of y'all been asking me for a book recommendations video. So that's what I'm going to do in this video. I'm going to share with you the books that had the biggest impact on my life and also give you the biggest lessons from those books. Now, I like to read physical books and I like to read books on my iPad. And to tell you a story about this first book, I'm gonna show it to you right now. So the first book that really changed everything for me, and the first book that really helped me get on the path of making money. Honestly, I attribute this book to a lot of my financial success today. Is right here, called The Millionaire Fastlane. Now, it's kind of ironic that I'm showing you this book on an iPad because it will give you some perspective of how broke I was when I first read this book. So basically, I had gotten an iPad from a graphic design competition that I won in school. And that's when I first started reading books. To give you some perspective, like I was personally so broke that I would go online and find the pirated PDF versions of these books and read them. Like when I read this book about becoming a millionaire, I literally couldn't even afford the $15 Kindle copy on Amazon. Now, I'm not recommending that y'all go pirate books, but if you can't afford to buy books, it works. So I pirated this book when I was super young. And man, when I read this book at 16 years old, it was like the first time in my life that I actually felt like I could get rich. It's basically the story of some random dude who worked a regular job until he was in his like 30s. And then he started an internet business. As I remember, it was like an advertising thing on marketing forums. And it was a very simple business. It was a one-person business. The guy was working on his laptop and he was able to get a Lamborghini and a mansion and he was living good off this internet business. And this was before my videos. This was before Iman or any of these other creators. This was the first time that I saw somebody that made it from the internet that didn't seem abstract. They seemed like a regular person, you know? So this book for me was definitely a game-changing book and the book that sparked the interest in my mind to know that I could get rich. And it taught me a lot of important lessons. Like it taught me that the best way to get rich is through an internet business, because over the years I had all these other ideas with physical businesses, you know, like selling clothes and reselling shoes and hosting events. But he taught me the concept of leverage and the fact that if you have media or if you have advertising, it can scale. And he most importantly taught me the concept of making money in your sleep. And that's only something that you could do with an internet business. So that's what I really got interested in from that book. And more than anything, honestly, because I barely remember the lessons from that book, more than anything, it taught me that it's possible. Everybody needs that first spark before anything else. And that's why that book had one of the biggest impacts on me when I was young. The second book, the book that actually like put things into motion for me, was this book right here. I read this book maybe when I was like 18, 19 years old. And this book is called The Slight Edge. Now, the tagline of the book is turning simple discipline into massive success and happiness. Basically, I could describe this book in 10 seconds. The little things that you do every day compound over time. And I never used to look at my life that way. Like I would play video games all day. I would work a little bit here and there. And I wouldn't think about how those paths would go in one way. But if you're working for an hour a day over the course of 3 years, something exceptional is going to happen out of that. I was always thinking that you had to have like these like one-off sprint sessions where you build something and then you launch it. But this book taught me that it's about these little simple daily disciplines that build up into something great. And it's a simple concept, you know, you probably understand it now, but this book, if you feel like you're not making progress in your life and you feel like you're stuck, this is probably the starting place. This is probably the first book that I would start at if I was you. This book, The Slight Edge, is a great book for getting you out of a rut. And for sure, it put me in motion to start making progress towards my future. So I highly recommend that book, man. That thing changed my life for sure. The next book on that same topic is called The Dip. Now, I don't know if you guys know anything about my story, but I started doing this online business stuff when I was young, when I was like 16, 15 years old. And I made a bunch of money. I made my first $1 million in revenue online by the time I was 18 years old. And quickly after that, I spent all of it. and I lost all of it and I went broke. I went $30,000 in debt. And at my very lowest point of my life, I was searching for answers. I didn't have much of a, relationship with God at this moment. I wasn't looking in the Bible. I was looking at books to kind of help me out. And man, this book right here, The Dip by Seth Godin, this book really got me out of a jam. It basically talks about the process of success and learning things. And it helped me realize that it's not everybody has to go 30 grand in debt or anything like that, but everybody's going to have those dips along the journey. And now when I start something new, I go into it expecting that it's going to go like this. You're going to make progress, you're going to climb, and then it's going to have a dip, a serious dip. Things are not going to work anymore. You're going to figure it out, and then you're going to hit another high. And now I start to look at success in this way. I used to think success was like this linear climb up, and over a long period of time it sure looks like that, but inside of those periods there's all these dips. And that book is like 100 pages. It's a really short book. If you feel like you're at that low moment of your life right now, this book will help you get out of it. I promise you. Those 3 books, just starting off, are such a strong foundation for any person that wants to become successful, because not only are those books going to give you financial foundations, but they're also going to give you the mental foundations to withstand what it takes to actually become successful. So I highly recommend those books. Now, the next one's a little bit more abstract, but when I was in college, this book really was the one that ignited my passion for spirituality, because I didn't grow up reading the Bible and I didn't really have much of a desire to pursue religion until this stage of my life. But this book opened my eyes to spirituality in general. So it's called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. This book was the first time I ever understood the concept of the present moment, which now has become a bit of a cliche thing, but I didn't even think about life in that way before. I didn't realize that I was anxious because I was worried about the future, and I was depressed because I was focused on the past. I was always just feeling like that's how humans are supposed to be. This was the book that got me into meditation. This was the book that got me to start really looking at life and trying to appreciate every moment for what it is. This is a book that I will reread for the rest of my life because the teachings in it are so powerful. With books that I really love, I'll reread them. I'll come back to them. I don't just read a book, close it up, and say, I'm never going to touch that again. I think the goal is to find the books that have the biggest impact on your life and just reread those over and over and over again. And this is one of those books. This is truly a book that anybody should read in their lifetime. It will change your life and it will change your perspective. Regardless of your religion or whatever, read that book, please. The rest of the books I actually have physical copies of. So I want to talk about this book right here. If I have a physical copy of a book, it's because it was really special to me. So these books right here, in my opinion, are even more special than the ones that I showed you. So this is another book that I'm going to be revisiting for the rest of my lifetime until I'm gone. This is called Meditations by a man named Marcus Aurelius. And long story short, Marcus was a Roman leader, one of the most successful humans that ever lived. And Marcus is somebody that is going through the exact same things that we're all going through. You might think that because somebody is successful, they are just having everything figured out. But this is actually his personal diary that after he died, got released. And this book talks about his personal experiences. And more than anything, I don't know why it took me so long to say this, but this book introduced me to Stoicism, which is something that I identify with heavily. I'm a Stoic person. These are self-image things that I say about myself. I'm a Stoic person. I follow Stoicism. The concept of Stoicism, the way I would describe it, is that you accept everything that happens in your life without labeling it as good or bad. Things just are. And once I started learning about Stoicism, I went down this rabbit hole. This book is a bit dense. It's not long, but it's pretty tricky to read. If you go and read some of these pages, it's a bit hard to read. But there's this author named Ryan Holiday, and he writes these very easy to understand books. He has one called Obstacle is the Way, where he takes Marcus Aurelius' teaching and he makes it really easy to understand. So Stoicism is one of those things that I feel like made me a man. Like I feel like I went from a boy to a man when I understood Stoicism, because I could start handling really difficult stuff in my mind, and I stopped complaining. You're almost never going to hear me complain ever if you hang out with me. And I think that to Stoicism. So Meditations, Marcus Aurelius, this is a lifetime book that I will always come back to as long as I'm here. The next book, this is one of those books that people always talk about, and it's actually not overrated. It's properly rated. This book right here, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Now, I was like the most introverted guy you could ever imagine. Like, I couldn't have a conversation with somebody. I couldn't talk to girls. I couldn't network. I was like really just this like shy, introverted kid. And now, I mean, if you guys see me, like, you know, I'm friends with a lot of the people that I grew up looking up to, which is cool to think about. And all my friends are great people. And I have so many successful friends and famous friends. And I consider myself now a very social guy. That introvert, he still lives in there, but I've completely rebranded that guy. And now I can go in any room and I can hold my own. And this book right here is the reason why. The biggest lesson that I took away from this book is nobody really cares about you. Everybody cares about themselves. So when you get a chance to meet somebody and you want them to like you and you want them to respect you, don't go in the room and start telling them all about your accomplishments and everything you did and what you did yesterday and No. What you do is you ask people about themselves. You ask them to tell you stories, and you have genuine interest in those stories, and you make parallels between their life and your life without taking away from what they're saying. If you want to build relationships with people, especially people that you look at as mentors and as higher up people, that's what you do. I don't know if y'all ever pay attention, but over the years when I would do interview videos and I would go meet with billionaires and other really successful people, I would always do research on them beforehand, and I would understand as much about them as I could. And a lot of times by the time that I went to go meet up with them, like when I met with the richest man in Florida worth over $50 billion, I brought him a very special gift that only somebody that really respects him would bring. And instantly from doing this, the man had respect for me, and he gave me his time and he gave me his energy, and he gave me a proper conversation because I respected him. So How to Win Friends and Influence People taught me that type of stuff. And I'll probably reread that book again too. I mean, I feel like I already understood it, but I'm not saying I'll never go back to that one. Now, the next book right here, if you're tapped in, you'll know what this book is because of the color. This book, man, this is a very special book. This, like you can see, I don't know, these are all the notes and the highlighting I've done all up in this book. All these little things that I folded pages, that's all notes that I've been trying to take. Like I fold a page every time I want to come back to something. This book is called Psycho-Cybernetics. It's by this man named Maxwell Maltz. He was basically a plastic surgeon. And this book talks about self-image. It talks about how this man would make a minor change to somebody's face and they would completely change the way they look at themselves, and they would go on to have massive success in their careers and in their dating life and in general with their mood and everything, just because they changed the way that they looked at themselves. He said he would do minor procedures like taking off a little piece of their nose or fixing their eyelids, and these people would just skyrocket their success. So he did a full study on why he thinks that is, and it's not because he did some special treatment to their face. It's because the people saw themselves differently. And that's where he understood this concept of self-image, and he wrote this whole book about your self-image and how to understand how you look at yourself and how to change the way you look at yourself without getting a nose job. And this is one of those books that really helped me a lot because I had, and still have, by the way, some negative self-image qualities, some things that I say about myself that are not positive, because the theory is that the things that you say about yourself become true If you believe yourself to be an introvert, you're going to be an introvert. If you believe yourself to not be able to focus, you are going to believe yourself always to have that trait. And this book right here, man, this book really taught me how to change those self-image habits. So if you feel like you got low self-esteem, like you feel like you actually don't like yourself, me too sometimes. No, just kidding. Read this book. Read this book right here. All right, two more. This book, it's a long one, but this is one of the dopest books I ever read. It's basically like 100 books in one. Now, don't let that scare you away. What I mean by that is this book right here is Mastery by Robert Greene. This is the same guy that wrote 48 Laws of Power. I don't really like that book that much. This is his best book, in my opinion. I read most of them. This is his best book. Basically, this book tells all the stories of the masters of the world, the people that were the very best at what they did, like, Henry Ford, Benjamin Franklin, Leonardo da Vinci, William Shakespeare, the Wright brothers. You know these people. These are people that changed the world. John Coltrane, one of my favorite artists. This book, one by one, goes and tells their life stories and then tells you the biggest lesson from studying their life stories. This is one of those books that is easy to read and it's fun to read because you're reading all these cool stories, and you can read one and then put the book down for 6 months and then come back and read another. I love this book. I give this book 5 big booms. This is a book that I've recommended maybe to 100 people. And it just, if I could say like a lesson or something from this book, is really that it don't matter where you come from, you can make it in this world. And it doesn't matter even what you want to do, you can become successful doing that thing. And also, I just remembered this. A big thing that I learned from reading this book is that talent is bullshit. It doesn't actually exist. Like, I used to always think that like this whole concept of like child prodigies and stuff like that was real. I don't believe that anymore. What I do believe is that we all are born in environments that shape us a certain way. So like this book has a chapter that talks about Mozart, and everybody thinks of like Mozart as this guy that was just born a child prodigy, right? Like, you probably think that. Everybody thinks that Mozart was just born able to play the piano. No, that's not what happened. His dad was basically abusive and put him and his 2 other siblings in a traveling circus band and forced them since the age of 1 and 2 to practice playing music until they literally couldn't play anymore, and then took them on tour to make money off of them because he didn't make it himself as a musician. So he wanted to force his kids to do it so that he could live vicariously through them selfishly and keep the money. How messed up is that? So obviously, by the time that he became 15, 16 years old, he was one of the greatest piano players that ever existed because he had been a touring artist, kind of like Michael Jackson, since he was 3, 4 years old. And then the reason why he started composing was because he got so tired of playing the music that his dad forced him to play, and he wanted to play his own music, but his dad didn't like that music, and his dad didn't think anybody was going to like that music, and he had his chip on his shoulder, as we say, to prove his dad wrong. And you know the rest of the story. So it's stories like that. Like, this whole book is full of stories like that make you realize that, like, oh, wait, these guys actually came from worse positions than me, and they made it work. I got to reread this one. I haven't read this book in like 2 years, but I picked it up off the shelf. I got like 50%, maybe less, of my books over there. I have a bunch all over the house. This is such a good book. Lately, to finish up this video, I'll tell you what I've been reading. There's 3 books that I've been reading recently. I just read this book right here called The Almanac of Naval. The Almanac of Naval is a great book. Naval is a billionaire investor, one of the most successful guys in the world. Great book. 10 out of 10. I recommend everybody read that. I've been reading this book. I just finished this book, The Courage to Be Disliked. That's a 10 out of 10 book. And I've also been trying my best to get into this good old Bible right here. Every day I read a little bit from Proverbs, and I'm trying to study, man. I'm trying to really learn the word, because the truth of the matter is most of these books that I'm showing y'all today got a lot of regurgitated information from the source, from the big book, from the book. So I'm really trying to read this, man. If y'all got any suggestions for me on how to get through the Bible and how to, or what books in the Bible should I read specifically, please let me know. But yeah, man, these are my books. If I had to give a list of books that everybody should read in a lifetime, this is it. So hopefully you pick one of these up. Pick the book that is relevant to your point in your life today. Most of y'all shouldn't be reading Mastery. Most of y'all should be reading The Millionaire Fastlane. But if you're at that higher level, these last books are going to speak to you. So I've been yapping for a while. If you made it to the end, you a real one. I appreciate you. Make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments what you guys want me to talk about next. See you soon.